Hey all, Ed here, and I'm back with Personally Personas podcast. In the next episode, I'll talk to Luke, Chief Executive Officer and founder at Mose. Mose is a fintech company at the forefront of group payments and money collection. Luke talks about how they're simplifying financial interactions for communities and teams alike.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder, or one of the co-founders of Mosea. What Mosea is essentially, in Canada, we have this platform called Interac eTransfer and Interac in general, which essentially handles all of the debit transactions in Canada, and that includes peer-to-peer. And so what we realized is, one, it's super inefficient. I wouldn't say super inefficient. It's super, it's not modern. It's a platform of the past. And when you go to the States and you see all these users on Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, you see people using Revolut in Europe and whatnot, they're so much further ahead in terms of UI and UX. And so we wanted to bring a platform like that to Canada. And because the peer-to-peer one-to-one is so hard to break into, we decided to start with group transfers. And so we did that by focusing on bill splits, vacationing together, grocery bill splits, restaurant bills, anything that required groups of people to transfer money to one another. And then that started branching off into events, because we realized two things. One, you need large groups of people densely located together for this platform to be successful. And the best way to do that was to have these large scale events where you were going with all of your friends. They would all have to come onto the platform. And so not only do we host our own events, which is how it started, but now we've integrated the actual ability to host user generated events on the platform. So it's now a mix of Venmo, Eventbrite in Canada.
That's awesome.
Yeah, prior to that, I had another company that was in the esports industry. That's really where this idea came from, because I was collecting payments throughout all different ways: cash, PayPal, through the website, and then Interac eTransfer. And this was the solution to bringing it all in one.
Gotcha. So that's good, because I want to learn more about this. Are you a technical founder, or what's your magical skills?
All sales and marketing and just hustle, really. Like that's really what it's about. I'm just a super big hustler. So for example, when I was in university, I didn't know too many kids, but I had played video games my whole life and was super serious about video games, especially the first person shooters like Call of Duty and whatnot. And when I went to university, all of my floor mates, or not all of them, but a bunch of them, were on the soccer team. And so they all played FIFA. And originally what I did is I said, well, this is a great way to meet friends. Video games is such a great way to meet people and play with people, because you're so dialed in, the competitive spirits get going. It's really great to just engage like that. And so the first idea was, listen, there were 16 guys on our floor, or 25 guys on our floor. 16 of them played the game. I set up a tournament one week, $20 entry fee. We split out the entire prize pool to the top 3 people. And then people from other residences started hearing about it. So I started getting other people in. I knew friends from back home that were interested, that went to other schools. They started coming in. And so fast forward about 6 to 8 weeks, and we had 100 or 200 people playing every single week, putting $20 into these different tournaments. And then that just kept expanding across Canada, a little bit into the States. And then Fortnite had come out, and one of my buddies, who, again, I played video games with him my entire life, he was super, super into it before anyone really got into it. He was one of the first people to download the app or download the game within one of the first weeks of it coming out. And so we hopped right on the competitive train almost immediately as it came out. And that's really what took the company off and started bringing in quite a bit of revenue, especially as just, being a university student in our first couple of years.
Yeah. Is that the first company that you created? And which state are you at? Did you sell that, or is it still?
Yeah. So that ended up selling to the OESL, which is the Ontario Sports League, back in 2018. And so I don't know if they're actually associated with the government, or they just say the OESL because it sounds credible. But anyways, that ended up doing quite well, and then with that money and idea of problems collecting money from people, and just in my personal life as well, that's what we did to go ahead and start Mosea. And so it was about 6 months of writing things down on paper, creating the wireframes, figuring out how we wanted to do this, what other people I would need on the team to make this a success, and getting kind of everything organized. And then in 2019 officially incorporated the company and launched the first version of the product in early 2020, which happened to coincide with COVID. COVID was absolutely disastrous here in Canada. The lockdowns were insane. If you were with groups of 5 or 6 people, you were getting tickets. I know one of my buddies, this was in the first 6 months of COVID, he had a couple friends over. So I think there were 3 of them that lived there, and then they had 3 or 4 friends over. and they each got $2,000 tickets. And so it was just like, they were basically preventing you from doing anything. And so it was really difficult because we were doing things which were sharing costs and whatnot. And so at the time, we completely pivoted the platform to online events. So a lot of people were doing online workout classes and online workshops, and that's where we focused all of our attention. And so other companies, I think it was like Hopin, for example, got really, really big during this time. And we were competing with Hopin without the same platform as Hopin. So all of our events weren't really conferences and whatnot. They were much, much smaller scale, informal stuff, people who were just picking up side hobbies and trying to do stuff during COVID to make an extra few bucks.
Wow, man, that's crazy. But okay, so I need to understand that, because at that point, you're probably like very early stages with the business, probably not making a lot of cash just yet. How did you turn that into, did you productize the events part of it, where you pay to join the event and you have like a commission fee or like a certain fee over the ticket cost?
Exactly. So our thing back then, at the time, it was just a web app, right? And so we were building this web app out with the group transfers and whatnot when COVID struck. And we realized people aren't going to really be splitting for peer-to-peer payments right now, especially in Canada. So Canada's a highly regulated market within the financial space. Open banking completely lacks here. And so we realized that if we went for this peer-to-peer side, it would likely fail. One, because people weren't splitting costs, but two, because the transaction costs, we would be losing money and we wouldn't be growing our user base fast enough to keep, raising venture capital money at the time. So we pivoted the platform to a web app, which was strictly focused on hosting these events. We made it very, very simple, very basic, added all the functionality that you would need in if you were hosting some sort of informal event. And then we would target all of these different people who were doing, again, these small scale events, things like having at-home workout classes, or they wanted to have like founder dinners or tech dinners, but you couldn't do it online. So you're doing it in Zooms with different breakout rooms and stuff like that. And so we made sure the functionality was there where it was useful and you could collect money for tickets and have an RSVP list and organize it with cheaper fees than what Eventbrite was charging or any of the other ticketing platforms that were out there. And that got us to a point to build user base, meet a lot of really cool people. And then that expanded as COVID started to wind up. We started putting our attention back into this group peer-to-peer side of the platform, the group spend. And then that's when we launched the app with the peer-to-peer side and eventually migrated the events part of it over. So now the app, if you download it or you have it, you're in the States, so I know that you can't, but it literally looks like different design, but Eventbrite and Venmo built into one app.
Oh, wow. Okay, gotcha. So do you feel that, okay, because you mentioned first, this is part of the problem that you were facing yourself of like, I was hosting these events and like the money splitting part of it was always a challenge. Then you probably observed the market, like, okay, in the US and Europe, there seems to be a solution out there. I would say Revolut back then wasn't that great yet. Probably they were like at early stages of like the kind of, sharing, expenses and all, where I feel that maybe the US was a little bit more advanced. But from that, not being a technical founder yourself, how did you get into the point where you're like, okay, this seems to be a problem I want to tackle? Because there are probably other problems you want to tackle in the world that it just like, that's not something that's super interesting. Are you naturally more, interested in events, sharing things with friends and groups and all? And is that why you decided to go around like this route of like building Mosea for that?
Yeah, I think the reason really why I went into this space is, especially when you're young, like I'm 26 now, but when you're like 19, 20, 21, 22, and looking back when I was 18, 20, 19, 21, 22, you just have no idea what's going on in the real world. Like you think you know everything, you think you're invincible, and you legitimately know absolutely nothing until you get into the real world. And the only thing I knew back then were my personal experiences where, you would always want to see friends and you had school and you were doing things with all these people and you were living in this like university bubble where it's just all of your friends and classmates and peers and every single person you see every single day is around your age. And so the only thing that I had real expertise on was, meeting up with friends and socializing. And I'm like, oh, I always need to pay people back for these certain things, or I'm getting textbooks. Me and my buddy are sharing a textbook for the school year and I've got to pay him back through this, and always having these tabs that are going. That's really the only thing that I had a really, really deep understanding of and realized the problem. And so that's how we, decided to go out and build that. And then, yeah, again, the technical side, I don't know anything about it, but I've got a mind, like the mindset is anything is possible, right? Like, especially you see all these people like Elon and all these people who are doing these wildly crazy things. And it's super, super inspiring. If they're building things like that, like all these companies, like even Persona's being built in the past, 3 or 4 years, you guys raised something like $100 million. Like it's super impressive seeing all these people and companies and groups of people coming together to do these things. And so there was never a doubt that this was possible. You just need to find the right resources. And so I went through the Rolodex of basically every single friend that I had that I knew for a long time, and realized, who would we need for this to be super successful? And then spent time pitching and getting friends to come on board, the two specific co-founders that I have now to come on board. And they've been super instrumental in building this. One of them actually had this company where he would essentially put on events at all of these different universities throughout university, primarily at the one that he was at. And they would bring in large acts and they would do all these different types of events. So he had a deep understanding of the event space. The other co-founder that I have, I knew him for a long time. He was a Swiss Army knife. I knew anything he did, anything he put his mind to, he could do successfully. And so he was actually trying to get into med school, and he was building or developing an anti-cancer vaccine at the time that he ended up coming onto Mosea. And he really just came in and picked up, software development from a very, very early stage in the company. And now he's one of our best developers by far. And it just stands as a testament to, what you can do if you the work in and you're with a group of people who have the same mental alignment.
I love that, man. I love that you've mentioned also the who and not the how. You're like, I know what I want and who can help me with that. And then you went for that. It's such a great attachment to like great networking, understanding who can help you, accelerate or moving the needle, because you probably have people who are way ahead in the technical side, maybe people who are way ahead, and in the legal side, whatever it is. So you always have someone you can tap into, and having that network, from what you're saying, it did help a lot.
No, that's the advantage of like you being out in San Francisco, right? Like I was talking with a buddy of mine, the Toronto network just isn't as dense as the San Francisco network is, or maybe even like the Austin network is getting and Miami network is getting. So it's very difficult to find these pockets of entrepreneurs or people that are all focused on the same thing. Whereas you see, the people who are in San Francisco, when you move to San Francisco, it seems like, from what I can tell, is you all start off together, right? You start meeting all these new founders that are young, that are just moving there to make a career for themselves. They try something 2 or 3 years, maybe that fails, but they try again. That thing maybe fails again, but they just keep sticking to it. And they've built up this network in San Francisco where something eventually hits. And you can really separate all the people that have gone to San Francisco into, okay, there's people who tried for 3 or 4 years, nothing hit. And so they moved and they got corporate jobs or they did something else and they left. But the people who stayed there and built their network and built up their reputation there for 10, 12, 15 years, they're all winning now. Like it goes back to the common saying, companies fail, but entrepreneurs don't. And it's really about just never giving up. So that's I found super, super interesting. And I'm trying to help help that with the Toronto community. But again, it's just, you only know who you know right now, right? So yeah.
And this is such a good point, because I can add one point to that, which is not necessarily just the size or quality of the community here. And again, I had communities like that in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I had communities like that in London, in Dublin. But I feel that the difference here is that people they're not scared to share and to help. And they just open up about things. They talk about things that they're going through. They talk about, challenges where they need help, where in certain cities, and again, putting this like in a big bucket of like generalization, but in general, what happens is other cities, they tend to be a bit more reserved. They don't open up about their numbers or their things or what they're struggling. And they tend to be like, oh, it's all right, it's all good. And it becomes like a little bit shallow, where here you can like deep dive a little bit more. I don't know if you feel the same about Toronto.
Yeah. I feel like it's very similar. I think a lot of the things that you see, or a lot of things that you hear or see, it's all public information. So I get that sentiment as well. Like when you're talking to founders, you can just see the amount of money that they've raised, or you can see, any of PR releases that have come out. But you don't know what's going on underneath the hood. So I totally identify with that statement. I think it's it's super interesting, and it's kind of goes back to the thought of, do you want to build in public or do you want to build in private? Like you see a lot of people who are starting new companies, and just on their LinkedIn or wherever it is, they say they're building at stealth company. And so those people are at the beginning, at least, are building in private. I'm a believer that if you're doing well, keep building in private. There's no need to send that out to the world and have people start scraping at your margins. But yeah, I think you can do it a million different ways.
I agree, 100% agree. Speaking of which, I have to throw the R word, the word regulation, because you mentioned that Canada is a highly regulated country, and I would imagine that for like a fintech business like yours,
you had like your challenges there to like, okay, what do I need to be compliant to this world here? Can you share a little bit about the experiences you had, from like the time you had the app ready, but then like, is it regulated? Do I have to regulate? How does that work? If Persona at any point was part of this support to make sure that you had all the configurations and settings in place for that to happen?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting about the Canadian market and with it being so regulated. So for those that don't know, the Canadian market has 6 big banks, and they dominate 95 to 98% of the entire market. And then you've got a ton of credit unions. And so the big banks, basically what they are saying to the government is, hey, we have 6 big banks. We never fail. There's never bank runs. We're trusted. There's incredible scrutiny over them. And so that's how Canada's configured this system. And so because we don't have that competitiveness that you have in the States, where you have hundreds, if not thousands of banks, you have to bank with one of these partners. And because you're banking with one of these partners and the regulators are so intertwined into them, there's a ton of regulation that goes on to make sure that things go smoothly. And so one of the things, again, at the beginning, why we didn't want to go full-fledged into the peer-to-peer space originally is because you get so entrapped into some of these regulatory protocols. And so one, that's why we went through the event side. But 2, as we started to expand out, we said, hey, we have this user base. We're starting to put in these features that are allowing for peer-to-peer transfers, and people are starting to use them. And so, we need to be regulated. You need to sign up as an MSB, which is a money service business. I think it's called a money transmitter license in the States. So it's the same exact thing there. And then you're regulated a million different ways. So you have to have a KYC and AML protocol, which has to be vetted. It has to be independently audited. And you need to do all of this before you can even get a banking relationship with someone. And then once you're an MSB and you get all of this auditing, you put your KYC AML protocols in place and you get it audited, then you can apply to be with a bank. And as far as I know, there's only 2 banks that actually accept MSBs in Canada. They're 2 of the bigger banks. And so you basically have to work with one of them. You need one of them to accept you. So then they accept you, that you become a banking partner. But part of that in the KYC AML protocols was making sure that Persona or another platform alike was integrated into this. So making sure that every single customer that comes onto the platform that hits a certain threshold or does a certain action that hits these protocols, we need to know exactly who they are. We need to know how to get in touch with them. We need to make sure that we know a little bit about their background. And so there's a lot of in-depth things that we need to make sure that we know. And that we simply could not do that without a Persona, at least. And if we tried to do it, it would be incredibly expensive. So having the Persona integration, we went through a bunch of different potential vendors that we could use for this. We actually used a different vendor at the beginning, but they just weren't as robust as we needed. And Persona just made a lot of sense, all things considering price point and being able to scale with you guys. I know we went to companies, I don't know if I'm allowed to say competitors on here, but like on Fido and whatnot, and their minimums are just so expensive that small companies like us that are just trying to get off the ground at the time, it was impossible to say to ourselves, yep, we can do that. Because we were blowing so much money. And on Fido's using their KYC AML policies or their KYC AML engine for companies that are generating a lot more revenue per user than we are on the initial transactions. So they're making that money back very, very quickly, where us, it's a little bit of a longer lifetime. And because it's a little bit of a longer lifetime, we take smaller chunks of revenue throughout that lifetime. So the Persona model just made complete sense for us. I think it makes complete sense for a lot of small startups. And even when other founders ask, hey, what are you using for your KYC AML? I always push them towards you guys just because of such low minimums that you provide.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And I have to say, I'm a little bit biased, not a little bit, I'm super biased because I'm working at Persona, but it's so true that there's 2 parts to that, as you mentioned. Your LTV is probably high, but it will take time to get to that LTV, to get to a point like I got that money back in a sense. So there's no way you can bake the cost of a super expensive solution on top of that sign up process. But to your point, it probably requires some regulations, some sort of configurations in KYC that, again, glad that we could serve and we can help with that. But at the same time, I feel that you probably had to learn that, like, in a way, to like, okay, who do I talk to help me vet this setting that I have here? Because you probably, okay, found a vendor, let's get it started with Persona. You're like, this is the KYC, a little bit of the out of the box configurations here and there. Did you have like a chief compliance or like a fractional compliance manager or someone to kind of help you understand whether this made sense or this was like, this is the regulation, this is the, I don't know, the requirements from the banks, and that's how I got this started. Can you walk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah. So when we went to go open up the bank account at the beginning, right? Again, knew nothing about this space at all beyond what I can see. So we go to open up the bank, and the bank says, hey, they ask, hey, what are you doing for business? We tell them how the business is going to work. And they say, oh, well, if you're doing that, then you're going to need these types of compliances in place. And so we kind of had a framework. We read through the framework that they gave us based on FinTrack, which is our regulatory body for financial transactions. I think it's FinCEN or something in the States. I don't entirely know. And so essentially we had to comply to all this. So the first thing we did is I asked our general counsel, I said, hey, what are the best lawyers that we can do to write up a protocol that allows us to get through all of this and then implement it at a reasonable pace of time. And he introduced me to this man, I believe his name was Keith, and he was fantastic. So he actually wrote a lot of the protocols, and he worked at one of the big banks in this specific area. So he was super helpful in saying, hey, you're going to need all of this. You're going to need a vendor for this because building it on your own is just going to take too much time. You're not going to want to do it. It's not worth it. And so we ended up going around doing a bunch of research. We went and as soon as you type in, what we're looking for, all of you guys come up. We scroll through a couple pages and you see everyone from all your competitors, Persona as well. And we just started having phone calls. We just said, hey, listen, this is exactly what we need. And this is the timeline we need it in. This is the budget that we have for it. Can you do that? And then everyone tries to, give their pitch on why that, hey, well, we need this big of a budget, but this is all you're going to get. And at the time, we didn't need crazy down to the wire little things because we were implementing our features slowly, right? We were not slowly, but we were implementing certain features that would be attacked by this slowly. And that's when Persona just made a lot of sense for us, right? Just doing research online and whatnot. And so really no one introduced us to you. We knew who the players were in the space and picked the best one based on our needs. I don't see, again, I haven't done too much research into the other competitors over the past year because we're happy. But I don't see why we would ever switch at this point, right?
That's awesome, and I'm glad to hear that, and thanks for the nudge on this. So kind of like changing topics, but still within the topic of your business and how you're building and growing. It's been, I'd say, like at least you said pandemic, so I'd say 2 years, if not more, since you've been building and growing. What have you seen as like the biggest wins that you're like, oh, this is like a great PMF for us, or a great way for us to gain traction and grow from here, and maybe things that you didn't know you would encounter like throughout this journey on the positive side, and then when you get into the challenges later.
Yeah. Okay. So hardest journey of my entire life by far, the most rewarding journey of my life by far, but definitely the hardest journey of my life. And you see a bunch of founders who are like 50 and 60 years old. Hey, would you ever go back to being 23 years old and doing that same thing again? And they all say no, because it's so difficult. And so I hear what they're saying, but I wouldn't change this for anything. And I think a lot of that has to do with the people that we work with. So I mean, like, we're in the office all day, every day, basically, but everyone's in the office all day, every day, and everyone's in it together. Like I was saying this morning with the guys, I was just saying, like, the guys and girls here, I was saying, honestly, I love being here because I laugh 150 times a day, even if just everything is going wrong. And so I think that that's, a fantastic part of it. The things that really helped, or things that I've realized over the past couple of years, which helped more than I even knew back then, was brand is so important, because a lot of platforms rely on network effects, and the network effects are built in the beginning through brand and vice versa. But they go together. Brand and network effects are just, they go completely together. And so at the beginning, when we didn't have a brand and we didn't have network effects, we said, okay, what is going to really identify with our users? What's going to make people think that we're the cool brand, that want to be a part, that want to be associated with our brand? And when they say, hey, like, who do you use for this? Or at least, spread word of mouth so that they tell their friends about us. And so in the very early days, we took, I think it was 600 cans or something like that of Red Bull. And we knocked on about, I think probably 1,000 doors. And we said, hey, take this Red Bull, take a picture with a Mosea flag and take a picture with the Red Bull can, and then post it on Instagram, on your social media. And so, you get a free Red Bull, you get a free flag. Some people said no to that, but you just keep going. And then eventually a person that we knew who had worked at Red Bull saw this and messaged me personally and said, hey, why is everyone posting this? Like, I'm getting people in my company saying, why are we getting so many posts with you guys? And I just said, oh, we're just running this campaign right now. People are putting events through our platform and they're having Red Bulls, and Red Bull, like we brought a bunch of Red Bull for people, and they're identifying us together. So sorry, we can take it down if you don't like that, but if you do, we'd love to keep it up. And then that ended up us leading to a partnership with Red Bull. At the beginning, they just were saying, hey, it's COVID right now. We can't really go around and do all this distribution because a lot of the CPG brands, they basically need you to sample their products for you to become a user of them or become a customer of them. And so we started giving out samples of their products and said, listen, take this picture, post it on social media, come to our events, post our brand, and you'll see the benefits. And then that kind of helped to building this initial user base of, as they always say, of the 100 users that really love you and use the product and gave us feedback to keep improving it. But it also gave them value too. They were having a platform where it was cheaper fees for them to post all their events. It was very easy to organize. All their friends identified with the brands. In the early days, whenever someone would put on an event on our platform, we would go to that event and make sure that it all ran smoothly for them. So if that meant we had to go and scan tickets for them, or that meant we had to go and set up with them, just unknowingly, we would just show up at the event and make sure that everything was going well. And I think they really, really appreciated that. And then that led us to actually building out a brand ambassador program where brands will give us product. We'll give our brand ambassadors compensation through product. It's usually different product every month because we want to make sure that the brands are happy as well. And they want, individual unique users every single month. So every single month we've got a rotation. Right now we've got about 1,200 applicants in our brand ambassador program. So there's never any real shortage there. And then we also compensate them depending on certain things and incentives that they have to hit. And that's led us to building this brand ambassador program where if you're with Mosea, you're considered, you know that you're going to be getting a lot of value. It makes your life easier when you're planning events, and people want to be, associated with it in general. So I think that was something that we realized was super, super helpful, especially for the consumer apps, specifically targeting the 18 to 24 demographic.
That's awesome, man. And I love the fact that you built this ambassador early on, because this is helping you definitely scale, build loyalty, and I'd say like in probably the future, like avoid any kind of churn, because people are just like vested in it. They're like, this is my thing. I'm all in. And this is great because I know when I was like looking at the website, I couldn't use the app, unfortunately, being the iOS not there yet. But plus I need to build a stronger community here, so then I can share with my friends and then we can split the bills. But the fact that you refer to that, I saw like in the copy, and you refer a lot to like being very user-centric, very community-centric. It kind of resonates a lot to what you're saying, because the work you probably have done on top of building the app itself is probably paying off now, and it's been paying off, and it's probably going to help you scale a lot in the future as well, which is really good.
Yeah, no, we're definitely we're definitely seeing it. We're growing like crazy fast right now. I think like last month we grew about 39 or 40% month over month. We just our numbers from this month are about 36 or 37% month over month. So like we're starting to hit that kind of inflection point, which is really great. And I remember in the early days, especially like during COVID and even kind of coming out of COVID, the big thing was this platform already exists in Canada through Interact. Sure, it's not the greatest thing, but like people are already using it. It's got this insane network effect. It's going to be too hard to overtake. And then you'd look at the American market. Hey, it's too hard to get into the American market because there's already all these platforms that are there that are doing the exact same thing. And I completely see that. But just from being on the ground and seeing what these people actually wanted every single day, we go up to different universities probably 10 to 15 times a month. And so you're talking with these people every single day. I'm like, my salary right now is basically that of a university student. I want to make sure that I can stay in the mindset of, okay, I still have to be super frugal with my money. So making sure that I still have the same mindset I had when I was in university when it comes to spending, so that you never kind of get ahead of yourselves. You see a lot of these people that are trying to build platforms like this, but they're at the bank wants to build it. And yeah, you're telling someone who's making $200,000 a year to go and build this platform. They don't truly understand the little nuances that make the 1 or 2% little things that make 60% or 75% of the difference when building things like this. And so I think that's what's been another really, really valuable insight, is just being super down low to the actual customer, making sure that every single day we're talking with them. We talk with all of our brand ambassadors on a weekly basis. And we have, I think, around 800 current brand ambassadors in the program. So So we're super familiar with exactly the problems that they have, and it's nice also seeing, you know, something when everyone's saying, hey, it's not going to work for all of these reasons, and they truly believe it's not going to work because they've seen 10 or 15 companies come before you that haven't worked trying to do the same thing. It's nice seeing that this is actually, you know, starting to work now.
That's amazing, man. I love that. And you're so right. I remember Figma one day. They were like the underdogs a few years ago, but they were building a strong community. And I remember because I had friends who were like, "Oh, I got invited to have pizza in the Figma office. I'll hang out there," and they would hang out in the office and just chat, you know, with the founders and, you know, share feedback with product managers. And they did that for a long time. You see Lenny's newsletter recently, he posted about how long it take Figma to be published as a you know, go out of stealth and then start to make profit in their first million to them getting acquired. It took a while. It took them a long time, but then they were building this community. They had this community, I'd say almost like a task force or this group like in front of them to protect them as a brand. And then when they went to the market, they were so strong, all in. It was crazy. Like they took over so many apps. I think Sketch was like, I can't remember people saying Sketch, the word Sketch anymore. Like it just flipped people's mindset so quickly. Then they became what they became. They got acquired by Adobe and all. And I feel there's a lot of benefits of the community in that, you know, stealth mode. But then when you're like hustling a lot, and I think you're doing literally that, like you're the hustle mode with the community. So they kind of like, they see you as like one of them. They don't see you as like, oh, look at this guy way ahead of us, you know, kind of like looking down. It's like you're with us. And this is super strong.
Yeah, no, that like, that's the thing too, is the reason why we don't want to raise like insane amounts of capital is being put onto that VC agenda of, you know, you got to really like triple, double type of thing every year. It's so much more valuable for us to build these meaningful relationships to make sure that these users stay with us throughout their entire time at university, post university, which, you know, again, we've already been seeing now for the past couple of years, and building with them as they grow up, right? Introducing new products with them as they grow up, and always understanding what's the next thing that they're going to need, preferably before they even know that they need it. And so that's been super, super helpful. Again, I think everyone on our team, we don't mind being in this space for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, building this thing out. We've already been in here now from the first thought of it to where we are, about 4 years. And so building slowly, you can just see how much more valuable it is, rather than, you know, getting on that VC train because it looks good, or you know, it's nice to raise a few, like, you know, 20 or 50 million dollars and grow out of control for a little bit. But it's just so hard to sustain that, especially when you get to scale and you're putting so much money into acquiring users, but the retention just isn't there. So completely see that how Figma did it.
Yeah, this is awesome. And okay, we're talking about the good things, and I wish I have asked this question before because we end on a high note, but I want to talk a little bit about the struggles. So the bros therapy here. As a founder, I imagine that there's a lot that people don't see. One of them that I heard a lot from friends is the loneliness, just because, you know, there's just so much that you can tap into your network to do, and there's things that you have to do yourself. You have to be, you know, consistent. You have to show up, and sometimes you probably have like doubts in your head and other things that come up. But I'd like to hear your perspective and your experience. It's the second company you're building, probably more mature now. You probably learned a lot from your previous business. What's been a challenge for you that's maybe like, oh man, this is like, is it ever going to go away, or is it going to be here forever? Like with me, do you have anything that comes into your head, or things that you're like facing that's more like, you know, on a challenge of being a founder, of being a CEO?
Yeah. I think earlier on, like one of the hardest things was going into every single VC meeting and them explaining to me exactly why this isn't going to work. And I'm trying to get as much input from them. And they're saying all of these different reasons why it could fail, but there were a lot of similar reasons amongst a lot of people. And usually when you hear a lot of similar things, it's probably true. And so that puts a lot of self-doubt in your head. I think the thing that's helped get us past that is, like, we come in every single day, and the reality is maybe this thing does fail, right? Like, and everyone knows maybe this thing does fail, but we are going to go with 100% effort. When we're, you know, in 50, 60, 70 years from now, when we're looking back on our life, there is nothing I would rather be doing than trying to build something incredibly difficult like this in the Canadian market, you know, for Canadians, but with the team that we're building it with. And so I think that's been a huge part of it. But the self-doubt, you're absolutely right. You have to kick that out of your head. You need to literally program in your head that no matter what your mind starts thinking this will work. And every single day, just taking one step forward, seeing what's the next thing that I can do to make this better. So that's definitely 100% true. I think my support system has been absolutely incredible. Between our investors, my mom, my dad, they are the number one supporters for us. When they're always asking, hey, do you need anything? I know like this is incredibly difficult. What do you need? Tell us what you need. We know that you always say these things, you put a smile on your face, but there's got to be stuff going on behind it. So just having that support system has been absolutely incredible. I don't know what I would do without the support system, to be completely honest. I don't even know where the hell I would be without the support system. But then, the everyday tasks come up. And I think it's all about having a mindset of you can win. So when, for example, so at the beginning, before we were putting Persona in, we started seeing people that were trying to commit fraud on the platform and see how they were trying to get around with these certain things. Or we would put on an event, and for some reason, we put on one of these big events. We had 1,500 people coming. The venue didn't open on time. So you've got a line of 1,500 people and you're just stressed out of your mind. And as soon as one of these, major problems comes in the way, especially the ones that are super urgent and they need to be solved almost immediately, we look at a team. We're usually, all together throughout all of this, and we say, listen, guys, we knew this wasn't going to be easy. This is why we're here. This is the part, this is what makes us, right? And so I think having that mindset and everyone just getting super motivated and fired up during those times is what really keeps you going. And so I kind of love now when problems come our way, because I know it's just another time to see what we're capable of, see where our potential is. And I mean, I could go a million different ways with this, but to be completely honest, I love it.
That's great, man. And when you say support, obviously I imagine that mom and dad, there's nothing better than someone who like truly loves you, and there's like no trade in that. Like it's raw. It's what you get. It's what you see is what you get. There's no like, I'm trying to win something here. With advisors, with investors, there's definitely like a mixed interest, and I'm glad to hear that you're like, okay, these are people I can go to and trust. Do you have other people or other groups that you go to? Do you have mentors or like friends that you're like, these are people I can trust asking for advice? Or you try and like follow a little bit of like your instinct, and then maybe like the investors? Is there like a way you approach this? Like the emotional side is more like parenting, on the, I'd say, the wisdom of the business, it's more like towards this other side. Do you have like a division in that way?
I think one of the things that I love about our investor group, to be honest, is none of them are they're all individuals in a way. Maybe they have their own like family office or whatever their vehicle they're investing out of, but they're all individuals that are there for the meetings when we have. So every month we have a meeting, where we give updates on everything, and they are so supportive no matter what. They want to hear the hard things. They don't care. A lot of them have made their money. They're doing this because they love helping young people, and whether this is $1 billion or a $10 billion outcome, it's not going to change their lives, right? They're not money hungry. They're more so, maybe call it greedy in the long term, but they want to be there for us and see us succeed. They know that we're young. They know we're going to be doing this for the next 40 or 50 years. And so I think that, in terms of them, even when there's really big, bad problems, they never falter. They never waver. They're always there to help us out however we need it, whether that's making introductions or just being, a voice or a soundboard for people. I think what's really helped too is having really, really close friends. I've built really great relationships over my life, and being able to go to these people and literally tell them the truth. I know that a lot of other founders that I see, whenever I ask them a question, it's all going really well. We're doing this and we're doing this. I know it's not all going well. I know that 90% of things are going wrong. And so being able to have a friend, like really close friends that you can say, listen, this is all the shit that's happening right now. And they can act as a soundboard, but they're also in the same mindset because they're a peer, right? They're in the same, stage of hierarchy as we all are. And so that's been really, really helpful to just have those people that can spit it out with you. They can make jokes. And I think the support system is so underrated, especially having it from different, investors that are a lot older than you, people who are your age, and then having people underneath you who you can mentor as well and hear those different perspectives, getting the full range of diverse opinions.
It makes sense. Is there, do you feel like you compromised a little bit on like your activities, health and friends and all, or you're able to also use that as a support system for you, for like, I don't know, you hang out, you do sports. Is there anything that you also do that keeps you, focused, keeps you, energized?
Yeah, well, I think that with work, it's like all the time. Like as you know, it's literally all the time. There's never a point where I can really put my phone away, because there's always something going on or someone that needs something from me, and it's usually not fun. It's not usually not the good stuff that I want to be dealing with. So that's never a question. I don't really ever put my phone down and say, hey, I'm just going to take a couple hours to do this. I'm a really avid golfer, so during the summer months after work, if it's 6, 7 p.m., I'll go out and try and get 9 holes in or go to the range. I definitely like working out. Usually in the summer months, it's in the mornings, but now that in the winter months in Canada, like it'll be dark here in an hour and a half. And so I'll work out after work. But the phone, it does not stop. I think the only hobbies that I've had besides really golf, which you can't no longer do in the winter months, is I've gone really into chess. So I was into chess a lot when I was younger, but I've gone back into it now. And so I'm just trying to get my elo up. And that's always really motivating because you're always playing people who are in the exact same domain as you. They're always on the same level. If you're, like an 1800 rated player, you're always going to be playing players that are around 1800. So that's, a lot of fun because every time you go, that you're going to have a good challenge. And then yeah, going out on weekends, seeing friends, that's always great. I try to keep it as balanced as I possibly can. But the number one priority is work right now. And there's no doubt about it. I think everyone in my life knows that the number one priority is work. And again, like I'm in my 20s. I don't mind working 70, 80 hours a week right now, especially for the next 5 or 10 years while I'm still building out the initial foundation of my career.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm glad you're actually doing some sports as well. We have a lot of friends here who do golf, and I think I need to learn that because it's a sport that gets a lot of connections. It's great. So yeah, definitely on my list.
I like golf more so for the that's the one thing. So you hear all this advice like, the only thing that can affect you is your mind. Like it's you internally. The external can't affect you, which is 100% right. But you don't realize it until you play golf because it's such an individual sport. It is all your fault if you have a bad shot. And so like if you hit a ball and so a lot of things, right? Like let's say you hit the ball right and it goes into the trees. Sometimes I'll hear people who are saying like, oh, like if I just, look at this lie I've got right now. Well, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't have hit it in the trees. Like sure, you may have got a little unlucky, but you shouldn't have hit it in the trees. And so you really understand you are accountable for every single action that you make. And I think golf has just completely lifted that mindset.
That's so it makes sense because I'm thinking like maybe tennis, pickleball, but you're playing against someone where golf is like you're by yourself. It's you against the environment.
Yeah. And it is frustrating as all hell. It is so frustrating.
No way. Oh man. Wow. Okay. I'm glad we actually got into a happy note at the end because I wanted you to hear like if someone in Canada is interested in learning more about Mosea and maybe try out the app, is there like a link they should go to or also to follow updates from you?
Yeah, you can follow our Instagram. It's at Mosea. You can also go to our website, mosea.io. And yeah, check it out. If you're in Canada, download the app. If you're not in Canada, shoot us a message and let's see if we can maybe build something and come over to the States. We're actually kind of in the process right now of seeing what it would take to get to the States. We know what it would take, but there's the market here is there's too much opportunity for us right now in the market here for us to start spreading our resources too thin right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's a smart move. Yeah. That's great, man. I love the conversation. I want to thank you again. I know like you're a very busy schedule. I imagine that building you're like nonstop is just like maybe 80 hours. Now you had to put like 81 hours because now we're talking here. So really, really glad we had this time. Really good to connect and learn more from you. Really want to keep following what Mosea is building. And hopefully if you get to the US, you let us know. We'll be happy to support you, but also want to try the app for sure.
Yeah. Well, also, like one of the things that I was thinking prior to this, I think I don't know if this is the complete strategy at Persona, but I think what you guys are doing, especially with these podcasts and going after the content side of things, is just so brilliant, especially with a platform where you don't get much interaction with the end customer that's actually using the product that you've built. You get it through the developers probably mostly, and then the business people that need to put this on. So I think that doing it through this way is just so brilliant. It's a great conversation. It gets people to know you. Especially, learning at how important brand is over the years. And I think Persona is doing such a fantastic job at that. So kudos to you guys. I really appreciate you having me here today. And thanks a lot.
If you're a startup founder, I have great news for you. Persona's startup program, because building a business is hard and we don't want you to do it alone. Explore the breadth of Persona building blocks and guide yourself through the integration process using sandbox credentials. Members of the startup program will get limited access to Persona with 500 free services per month for 1 full year. Applications for the general cohort are now open. Looking forward to seeing you there. And if you like this episode of our podcast, make sure to leave a review and share with your peers. Thanks.